Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America online, thisweekinamerica.us. Hope of Glory takes us to the Deep South, where social and political mores rule over laws, and where descendants of slaves may not be socially equal, but they are not socially inferior. It's about a Southern white newspaper editor who believes in and does, regardless of cost, what he can to ensure equal rights for all. The story was written by Carolyn McClendon, a Southern lady who spent 80 years observing it firsthand, a true Mississippian who worked on a variety of jobs throughout her remarkable life, a second-grade teacher, newspaper reporter, owner of an advertising agency, also a travel agency, where she conducted tours of Mississippi as well as Europe, the author of 2 travel books, Outdoor Mississippi and Meet Mississippi, general manager of the Mississippi Symphony, worked for the Mississippi Library as well, editor of the monthly Mississippi Episcopalian newsletter. She died in 2013. With us to discuss Hope of Glory and the remarkable life and career of Carolyn McClendon is Dr. Douglas Perrett Starr, her third husband and his second wife. Married from 2008 to 2013, they'd known each other since 1953. Dr. Starr was married to his first wife for 54 years. She died in 2004. Carolyn and Douglas were each other's last loves. Dr. Starr is an APR Fellow, PRSA, Public Relations Society of America, the gold standard of the world's largest association of PR professionals, a former Associated Press newsman and reporter for 20 years, Professor Emeritus of Communication, and with us on This Week in America, Dr. Douglas Perrett Starr to discuss the book, Hope of Glory. Dr. Starr, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us on the show today.
Thank you, sir.
It is a fascinating book, a fascinating look at life in the Old South then, and we'll talk about how much it's changed now during the course of the interview. First of all, talk about your relationship with the author, Carolyn McClendon, your personal relationship and the relationship with the book, because you were instrumental in getting this book out to the general public.
Well, our relationship, Carolyn and I, dated back, as you said, to 1953. And when we met, she and Millie, my first wife, became fast friends and stayed that way until Millie died in 2004. And so we had Carolyn in our operation month by month. And something event that would occur to us, she would come visit. If it would occur to her, we would go visit. So we had a lot of activities together, Carolyn and Millie and her various husbands and me. So
yes, it's an interesting ongoing relationship.
Started writing 2 books. She wrote one, was writing one called Mary's Journal, which was about the Virgin Mary and her rearing of Jesus. She didn't finish that one, but she did finish Hope of Glory. And on both of them, she asked me to copy edit, which I did. Now, she was educated as a college graduate and had years of experience in writing. So all I corrected really were typos, accidental misspelling of a word, yes, or misplacing a comma, that sort of thing. And the main thing I did after copy editing was recommend that she begin with a prologue, since this Hope of Glory is a story about civil rights and black versus white and that sort of thing, that she begin with saying what happened to the black civil rights activist who is coming to Jackson, Mississippi, to object to the inauguration of a pro-white governor and to get rid of the state flag, which has the Confederate symbol on it. And so she did. She changed the beginning of it to They Came Singing, which is the about 300 black university students showing up at the inauguration of the governor. And of course, it doesn't say what happened to him, just he got shot.
Yes.
And then the rest of the story is what happened to him And what happened to the editor of the newspaper there in Jackson, who was a Southerner, but he wanted equal rights for everybody. So he got in trouble because the politicians, the United States senator was the brother of his wife, and the senator kind of controlled what his wife believed and that sort of thing. And he had difficulties not only at the newspaper but also at home, which made a difference. And then then the story gets into the white men of Mississippi, and this is true. They formed what they called the Citizens Council, and what they did was to approach people who wanted equal rights and tell them, lay off, or we'll run you. If you're in business, we'll run you out of business, which they did. Some of them, they had no business, so they simply killed them. And understand this, to my knowledge, except in recent years, no white men, except one, and he was a Yankee from the Civil War, was ever convicted and executed for killing a black man.
It's amazing, and you talk about the jury system there. The jury system was basically white men, no blacks, no women.
No blacks, no women. And so how are you going to get a guilty verdict? So
Yeah,
you got
certainly.
a white man on trial for killing a black man, got 12 white men sitting there, they're not going to vote aye.
Yeah, the book really captures the Deep South. The book we're talking about is Hope of Glory by Carolyn S. McClendon. Talking about it in the program, her husband, Dr. Douglas Perrett Starr. The book is a republished book, now available for sale in ebook and paperback at its lowest retail price. Available for sale at all Amazon sites, at Barnes & Noble, at Page Turner Press, and Media Direct Orders. Chapters Indigo in Canada, Waterstones in the UK, Booktopia in Australia, New Zealand, and a lot more. For all those places, you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly. The book has been called a soulful and straightforward call for action regarding the racial bias and civil rights status in the South. And I think that pretty well sums it up, doesn't it? It really gives us a reflection of what life was like there at that time.
At that time, and some parts of it now still. Blacks are not, legally they're equal, but socially they're not, because most blacks still in the South don't have as much education as most whites, and you're gonna you're gonna have a social a gathering with farm laborers. You don't even have a social activity with white farm laborers. Why would you do it with blacks? So now. Of course, the schools are in Mississippi all integrated, and they were at the writing of the book. In Jackson, Mississippi, state capital, most of the whites don't want their kids to go to school with blacks, so they all moved to the adjoining counties and set up their own schools, and that left Jackson now 85% black. Think of that.
It's a staggering number. When I saw that, it was difficult, in 2018 to look at that statistic and think it wasn't a typo, but that's actually the fact. We're looking at 85%. The book is called Hope of Glory by Carolyn Scanlon McClendon. With us, her husband on the program, Dr. Douglas Perrett Starr. Let's talk a little bit about the motivation, the inspiration for Carolyn to write this book and what she hoped readers would take away from it. You were there during this process. You were a key part of the process. As you mentioned, the prologue really captures our attention right away. It sets the stage for what we're about to read in the book, Hope of Glory. Talk about her inspiration, her motivation for writing this book.
Well, her motivation, very simple. She wanted to tell people in the United States what the South was and is like, and of course it just stemmed from slavery days, and it didn't change any because the blacks didn't change any. even today, there are fewer blacks in college than they really want. They want more black people to get more education. Uh, a lot of black parents are illiterate, which means that their children can't write them a letter. They can't read it.
Yes.
So we have that, and Carolyn wanted to bring that into focus and say, this is the South. This is where it came from, and we're still there in a lot of ways. And she was hoping, and till the day she died, that things would change.
Open
Now,
some eyes, and the book will do that. Hope of Glory by Carolyn Scanlon McClendon with us, her husband, Dr. Douglas Perrett Starr, talking about the book. The book really deals with the Confederate-based state flag. Let's talk about that because that was the focus of the book as well. It's a
yeah,
focus of people's discussion today. What do you do with Confederate statues? What do you do with the Confederate flag? Talk about her perspective, your perspective on that.
oh, mine. Well, I think it's history that we did have a civil war, and the South had, for a while, its own country with its own president and so forth. And you can't erase history.
Right.
That's always going to be there. And that battle flag is just the X with the stars in it that the flag bearer carried into battle so that the Southerners wouldn't shoot those people, it would shoot the others, the Union people. And because the Confederate flag was a lot different, and it was too big and all that sort of thing. Now, Georgia had that same battle flag image on its state flag, but it changed. Mississippi said no. Now, the idea of removing statues to me is ridiculous because in New Orleans, where I grew up, there was a statue of Robert E. Lee, and it was in an intersection of two streets, and they made a circle, and they put a statue of Lee on top of a pedestal, and they called it Lee Circle. And Robert E. Lee, uh, he was a graduate of the military academy, and after the Civil War, he helped found Washington and Lee University. Now, are you going to take away his statue just because he fought on the South Side? It's history, kind of silly to me. And so Lee Circle now, I don't know what they call it because Lee is not there; he's gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a real tricky question that brings out emotions from both sides. It's interesting, your perspective, especially someone who's very familiar with the New Orleans area. You know,
Yes.
one of the topics addressed in the book, and I mentioned in the beginning, is it gives you some insight into how blacks melted their lives in the Deep South by using what their ancestors brought from Africa. Talk about that. How were they able to meld their lives to survive in the Deep South?
Well, of course, uh, wives were treated as second-class citizens, whether black or white, didn't make any difference. Uh, and and uh, and what some of the things that the blacks brought over from Africa uh, it influenced the cooking in the South because they brought things and ways to cook from Africa, and it melted into uh, the Spanish. I mean, excuse me, the Southern way of cooking. Um, One of the things they brought over was the vegetable okra, and that's an African vegetable. And they brought it over here, and they put it in gumbo, and gumbo is the African word for okra. So you see, uh, they they just they served the African women served in the household as nannies and maids and cooks and all that sort of thing. So they didn't have to read and write. They just had to know how to cook or how to sweep and do that sort of thing. And the kids, black, white, whatever, didn't make any difference. The kids really attached to those maids. And even we had a black maid for a long time, and when we left Mississippi, my kids cried because they were leaving the maid there.
Oh, yes, had that attachment.
Yeah.
With us on the program is Douglas Perrett Starr. His wife, Carolyn McClendon, is the author of the book Hope of Glory. That's what we're talking about, the book in the program today. It's a republished book now available for sale in ebook and paperback at its lowest retail price. Available for sale at all Amazon sites, Barnes & Noble, Page, Turner Press, and Media Direct orders. Chapters Indigo in Canada, Waterstones in the UK, Booktopia in Australia, New Zealand, and a lot more. Time is going by way too quickly. I mentioned in the beginning, and referring to Carolyn, is just a remarkable lady. She's been called a typical Southern lady. Talk about her. I mean, just the experience. An educator, a travel agent, an advertising executive of nonprofit organizations. Talk about her. She really, it sounds like, lived life to its fullest and absorbed everything and attempted to make changes in injustices that she saw.
Well, she was college educated at what they call Mississippi College for Women, and the graduates all called it the W. And then she went into newspaper reporting and worked in the Capitol at Jackson for the morning newspaper for about a year. And then she married her first husband, and she and her husband founded an advertising agency, and she worked at that for years, and then that kind of fell apart. So she established a tour company all by herself, and she took tours, people on tours to all kind of sites in Mississippi, because Mississippi has a lot of good places to visit and plantations, and all that sort of thing. And then it got so good that she started going to Europe, and she spent 15 years doing European travels, and she made 12 or more tours in Europe during those 15, every year for 15 years. After that, kind of went apart. Then she went into working for the Jackson Symphony Orchestra, and brought it up to speed, and it became this Mississippi Symphony Orchestra. And all she did was the business end of it, the finances and scheduling where the concerts would be. Well, as long as it was Jackson Symphony, you couldn't have a concert someplace else. But when it became state, then she could move the orchestra around, and did. It became a much better, bigger orchestra. After that, then she went into something else. Let's see, what was it?
I got the Mississippi Library. She was involved in that, and then the Episcopalian newsletter. So she
was in charge of all the publicity for the Episcopal Church in Mississippi, working right alongside the bishop. And she even recommended to him what kind of speeches he would, not sermons, what kind of speeches he would make.
Yes.
And then during all of this, she was writing these two books, and rearing three kids.
She had her hands full with everything she had that was going on. Certainly a remarkable lady. And I mentioned in the beginning here, in the few minutes we have left, that your background with public relations, your background as a teacher, your background with Associated Press, as a former newsman, as you watch the news, read about the news, do you have any urge to get back in there and report on the news?
Yeah. Yes, I miss it a great deal. Even though I taught college for 33 years, I still miss reporting, because a reporter gets to know what's going on before anybody else knows.
Yes. Yes, and then their job is to funnel that information, and unfortunately, people sort of second-guessing the role of the media. Some people second-guessing the role of the media in the country. And the role of the press is certainly critical to who we are as a country. I mentioned in running down, I'll do the list again of where the book Hope of Glory is available. Page Turner Press and Media Direct Orders. I know you've been working with Page Turner. Talk about that experience. What's that been like for you?
Well, it's been unusual for me, but I've been really pleased with the way it works. Being a reporter and a teacher, I never published anything except what my boss told me to write about and to teach about and that sort of thing. So that working with Page Turner and the distribution of information in a place where I had never worked before, it became unusual and most appreciative of it because of the way it works. And everybody I've dealt with has been really polite and understandable and understanding and helpful, which I've found a lot of people in business are not all that helpful, and I wonder why they stay in business. But Page Turner seems good.
Yeah, and they're doing an excellent job in getting the message out there. The message in the book Hope of Glory by Carolyn S. McClendon. It's been called Honest, Poignant, Hope of Glory. Sure to capture readers' attention as it puts Southern present and past into readable language, tells the story of someone who wants to make a change, but how family members and social mores get in the way. It's a fascinating read. Our guest in the program has been Dr. Douglas Perrett Starr, the husband of Carolyn McClendon. The book, again, is Hope of Glory. Douglas, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's a fascinating book. It's a great message. It gets us thinking as we're reading. It's an excellent read. Thank you for sharing it with us on the program today.
Well, thank you, sir.
It has been our pleasure. And once again, this is a republished book, now available for sale in ebook and paperback at its lowest retail price. Available for sale all Amazon sites, Barnes & Noble, Page Turner Press, and Media Direct Orders. Chapters Indigo in Canada, Waterstones in the UK, Booktopia in Australia, New Zealand, and a lot more. Of course, all that information you'll find on the book Hope of Glory on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. We're back after these messages.